What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D with Black Fathers Now. And dig this, man. We got a dope episode. And this is actually a first for me, right? This brother that's on today is actually the first brother that I've ever interviewed twice. This is my second podcast platform, and I've never interviewed someone twice. So this man, that means he's bringing something. He's bringing some fire to the table. And if you need to know a little something about him, you can actually go back to episode 16 of Black Fathers Now and really listen to his story and where he came from and all of that. But today, my guest is none other than my man, Troy Spry. Troy is, first and foremost, a husband and a father, but he's an entrepreneur. He's a speaker. He's a writer. He's a certified relationship coach. I mean, a problem solver, just an all-around solid dude. He's a member of Kappa Alpha Psi. We'll let him slide with that. I mean, 1911 works, right? Just the wrong date, brother. Wrong date.
But I get it. We still all love.
It's all love, man. It's all love. But he's also the creator of Exclusive Thoughts. You can actually, if you're looking at the video of this, you can see it on his hat and his shirt and everything. Exclusive Thoughts. He'll talk a little bit about that later on. But today, we're releasing this bad boy, the Monday after Valentine's Day. And so Valentine's Day evokes a lot of thought process around relationships, right? And I wanted to bring my man on here because he's a certified relationship coach. He does a whole lot of counseling and all of that stuff in that realm to talk in the realm of relationships, but a few different concepts that have started to permeate our society. And as Black fathers, yes, our job and responsibility is taking care of our kids, but it's also about taking care of and maintaining strong relationship with our spouse, right? And so that's of utmost importance. Without a strong relationship and a strong foundation there, it's going to be hard to parent your kids well. You can still do it, but it's a lot better when you and the spouse are on equal footing. So, so without further ado, Troy, what's popping, man?
Oh, man. Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Hey, having me on twice, too. I feel honored now. I feel honored having me on twice, man. I can't wait to this conversation that you and I have today just about relationships. That's what I love talking about and, how we can make them healthier and happier. So let's get into it, man. Let's talk about some stuff. What's on your mind?
What's on my mind? Well, dig this, man. I'll tell you what spawned me wanting to reach back out to you to have a conversation. I was watching, actually, you and I talked about this beforehand. I was watching a Breakfast Club interview, and it was with Ronnie DeVoe and his wife. And it was actually a really cool interview. But the very beginning of that interview, they talked about this concept of an open marriage. And, as we know with tastemakers and influencers and celebrities and all, as they go, a lot of times the people like to follow, right? And luckily in their story, they went through the whole thing and kind of got back around to noting how this open marriage thing was not really a good idea, but they talked about it on the front end. And you being a relationship coach and all of that, I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on the prevalence of this, the danger of this, but just get your thoughts on it, my man.
Yeah, man. I think I listened to the interview as well, and I thought it was interesting that they brought it up. I think the first thing we got to think about, though, is this is not as common as the media would make it seem, right? And so this whole idea of open relationships, I think the data might suggest maybe like 5% of marriages maybe are open, right? Mm-hmm. It's not that it's like a bunch of people doing it, but like you said, when celebrities and people that are influencers start talking about it, it seems more commonplace, right? So it seems like it's bigger than what it is. But just for the audience out there, if anybody's kind of looking at what's the definition of an open relationship, right? So there are a few different types of open relationships, but really it's this idea that you might be in a committed relationship with your spouse, but y'all have made an agreement to either allow the other person to date or have sex with someone else. It depends on the agreement, right? You got different types too. You got like polyamorous relationships. That's a little more emotion involved in it. They're allowed to kind of date that other person. Or you have like swinging type relationships, right? Where it's open, where they go and have sex with other people. So there's a lot of different levels to it. And ultimately it really comes down to what the two people agree on. But there's a lot of danger in it, man. I think it sounds good. And from my perspective, what I've seen just coaching people and just talking to people, it usually stems from a little bit of selfishness, right? Or
Mm.
boredom. It's usually like this idea of, I don't want to commit totally to you. I want the option to be able to deal with other people. Or it might be a fetish, or it might be just they want more sexual satisfaction, right? But
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, you don't fix issues in your relationship outside of your relationship.
Say that again, brother.
Right? That's not how you
Wow.
do it. You don't fix issues within your relationship outside of your relationships, because it's still going to come back to the same two people. It's kind of like what they talked about on the interview, right? I think it was his wife was saying, they met when they were 21, when she was 21 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't get a chance to really experience anything like in life, and so she wanted to experience some things, and he was like, okay, cool. And so she started dealing with other women.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then he started dealing with other women as well. And it was all good for a little bit until the key word jealousy crept in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And to me, that's ultimately what you see in these situations. Right. It sounds cool, but then people end up jealous. I don't think people are emotionally intelligent enough just naturally to handle open relationships.
Mm.
I just don't think. I think we're selfish beings. I think it sounds good. I think usually it's one person doing it to satisfy the other person most times. Usually it's like they might agree on it, but it's usually like, I'm interested in other people, so rather than lose you, I'll allow you to do these other things. But I don't think most people really agree with it on both terms.
You said something there, and for me, just thinking back to prior to marriage, right? And especially being a guy, this is Black fathers now, so we're talking, two brothers. I mean, obviously, women are listening too, but before you're married and you don't have that commitment, it's interesting because that, in essence, is kind of the lifestyle that a lot of us live prior to being in the official, relationship. So it's kind of like we have this open, in essence, it's like we're practicing an open relationship,
Yep.
Until we, walk down the aisle, put the ring on the finger, and then we stop it. But then it seems like some of the celebrity, stories or whatnot that come out it's the continuation of what was going on prior to marriage. So at that point, it's like, where is the commitment to the
Yes.
relationship itself?
Is there actually a commitment, right? I think, that's the thing. They might be committed financially, maybe, or they may be committed just with the title or whatever it is. But man, here's the thing I think about. I always thought the true test of manhood wasn't in the openness, but it was in the commitment piece. Right?
Wow.
So it says more to me about you as a man if you can commit to something versus if you can be open and just spreading your seed kind of everywhere, right?
Wow.
And so I think we got to think about it that way. For me, that was the next step of marriage, was like, okay, I've done these things. Am I man enough now to be able to commit myself to this union and only this union, right? And I will tell you, the most growth I've ever had in my life was having to get into that bubble of commitment, right? Because once you commit to that thing, it creates commitments in all other areas of your life, right? And the time, you don't have the time to be dating 3 and 4 women, right? I mean, think about it. I mean, even for you, you're a father,
but
right?
I say, man, I couldn't.
I mean, that's crazy. I can't even imagine handling that many women and still actually being a good husband to my wife. Right? It's not enough time in the day for that. Now, maybe if it's just a sexual thing and maybe it's a hookup every once in a while, maybe people can do that. I just don't see it working out that way a lot of times, man. I honestly, I think people end up jealous and they end up not really being able to trust them in other areas of their life too. Because they're like, well, if you're out here doing this with these people out here, like, randomly, then what makes it that you're not doing it, with other areas of our life, like finances?
You said something that's interesting. Concepts and principles transcend circumstance, right? So if you take the concept of commitment and you practice that, that's not something that you're only that only happens in one segment or one aspect of your life.
Yes.
So if you're committed, that is something that transcends various aspects of your life. So if you're looking at your finances, you're looking at, other things, if you're committed to that, there's typically a trail that follows that in regards to commitment across the board.
Yeah, it's behavior, right? I mean, it's usually a disciplined person is usually a pretty disciplined person.
Wow.
Right? If they're disciplined in one area of their life, they're usually pretty disciplined in most areas of their life, right? I mean, I think it comes down to mindset and being able to kind of tell yourself, it might be nice to have sex with another woman, but is it really worth it, right?
That's the
Is it
question.
really worth it?
That's the
Because
$1 million question. Is it worth it?
let me tell you something. I don't know many people out there who are okay just internally with their spouse being with someone else.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? I think the concept sounds cool, right? I just don't think in practice it really goes over the way in which people say they think it's gonna go, right?
Mm.
I mean, that's the main reason. That's the main reason in the interview they stopped, right? It started causing some dissension within their marriage, right? And
That's
they was
right.
like, "No, we can't do this."
That's right. That's right.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, they had people. It started. Usually, there's a set of rules to it too.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually like, okay, you have to wear protection, or
Mm-hmm.
you can't bring the woman to the house, or there's usually a set of rules to it. But when you're involved with someone consistently, don't you start breaking rules here and there?
That's right.
That condom all of a sudden come off,
Mm-hmm. That's
right?
it. That's
All of
real.
a sudden you going on multiple dates with that person. It ain't just a different person each time. You bringing them around. All this stuff they start cutting corners. That's why I don't think we're emotionally intelligent enough naturally to be able to really handle those situations.
And to your point, though, it's just like, but then what are you committed to?
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, if you're not committed to that individual person, if you're not committed to your spouse, you're not committed to, the mother of your children or whatever, then what is it that you're committed to? Are you committed to, it's like, I think we choose at times to be committed to other stuff. So it's like you can be committed to the openness, or I am committed to being a playboy, or I'm committed to, it's like you're choosing. I think you're still committed, but you're just committed to something different.
For sure. No, for sure. And the thing is, if you're going to get married, then what's the point, right?
Mm-hmm.
The point of the marriage is to build that familial foundation for another generation, right? It's a support one another. That's what I get it. People have these ideas of what marriage is, but to me, I see a big picture of marriage. I see not just I'm going to be able to have sex with someone all the time, but I see a foundation that I'm building for the next generation, for my kids, right? Mm-hmm. And you need someone that you can trust if you're going to do that, right? So I don't know if I can trust you when you dating 3-4 other people just to satisfy your sexual, innuendos or whatever it is, right? Mm-hmm. So to me, I feel like, if you're going to commit, right?
and you mentioned something, it was so dope. You talked about foundation, because at the end of the day, again, this is Black fathers now. Mm-hmm. So we're about building ourselves so that we can be the best men that we can be, ultimately the best fathers that we can be. But that then sets the example for that next generation that's following behind us. So to your point, as we step out there, as we dip and move, or as we approach, not being committed to one particular person, what message is that sending to the next generation?
Yeah, and I would argue, if you looked at the interview too with Ronnie and his wife, I forget her name. I hate to keep saying just his wife.
I know. I apologize too. Yeah.
I'll get her name later. But but if you look at it, they started. He said, he made a good point. He said when they became recommitted to each other, all of a sudden the visions for their relationship started coming alive. Right? Like they couldn't have kids before. Right, and then all of a sudden they were able to have kids. And so it tells me that there's power in commitment.
There's power. It's funny you say it's power in commitment, and it's power in acknowledging and getting to the point in which you put the right things. Basically, you get that divine order set up, right? Because the other part of their interview that was interesting was at the back end of it, they mentioned that the issue or the reason why this whole openness started was they never started with a foundation.
Yes.
They never started with, and that was, so if you're watching this and you're hearing us, via podcast or watching us via YouTube, go back and check the Breakfast Club interview with Ronnie DeVoe and listen throughout to that whole, when they talk about the whole scenario, because they eventually got back to talking about how the reason it all started was the lack of foundation to begin with. And that's why I wanted to bring Troy on this show to kind of talk today a little bit more about it, because I want brothers to establish strong foundations with your spouse. Let's establish strong foundations with the mothers of your children, because our kids are watching. But at the end of the day, that strong foundation may hedge against this potential desire for some openness in your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, the openness a lot of times is insecurity as well, right? That's what a lot of it comes down to. And the other part of it is it's FOMO, right? It's fear of missing out. But see, that's because a lot of times the only foundation we have for marriage is the ability to have sex. And And if that's how you look at marriage, and then you all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can't have sex with anybody else, I need to have other options, you're looking at marriage the wrong way. Right? And if you were foundationally looking at marriage as something that you can commit to for the long term, for your family to see, to raise a family correctly, now your idea of openness changes. It's like, why do I want to open? Because now my son's watching, right? Now my daughter's watching. Do I want her to be in an open relationship? You know, do I want her to be at risk for diseases and jealousy and all these other things? Like, if you don't want her doing those things or him doing those things, foundationally, you got to think about how you're doing in your marriage. Right, because that's what they're going to follow. Even Ronnie said on the interview, he said, my parents got divorced when I was like 2 or 3. I never saw an example of what a good marriage looked like. So imagine if it was a good marriage he saw growing up, right? Then that idea of openness probably would have never crossed his mind.
That's big.
It wouldn't have been normalized to him. To him, it was like, I'm just going with whatever she say because I don't know what's supposed to be different. It's supposed to be fun. He might have saw an article one day and whatever, you know. And I think let's talk about another point though. I think a lot of us got to think about when it comes to open stuff. The reason she said she wanted openness was because she hadn't experienced a lot of things. Right? And sometimes we get into a relationship and we're insecure because we're like, well, if that person hadn't had time to you know, sow their oats, then they might be wanting to step out on me. Right? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, if I give them permission, I won't feel as rejected.
Wow.
And I don't. To me, that's still looking at marriage the wrong way, right? It's still looking at it the wrong way.
But it's interesting because the whole concept of I hadn't experienced much life yet. You know, what life is it that you're supposed to experience, one, but then two, who's telling you or who is letting you know that you need to experience more things? Again, that goes back to my whole notion of, you know, the celebrities and the influencers kind of dictate, well, you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to be with this number of people. You're supposed to have done all these different things before you get here. Who is the one, who is that authority setting what it is you should or shouldn't do before, you know, you get married? Because I think it's just interesting because when we take a step back and really think about the influences for us, you know, as men growing up, you know, we're taught to sow our oats, right? You're taught not to commit. You're taught to go out there and have some fun and get it all out your system before you know. But it is funny when I look back, I always come back to the notion of, you know, and I've said this numerous times with various individuals, I wish my wife was my first. It's hard, you know, and it's crazy when you look back because you're just like, dang, I wish my wife was my first, because at the end of the day, what came out of every other encounter prior to my wife?
Exactly. Probably nothing very productive.
Nothing. Not a lot of fear, a lot of whatever. I mean, a
drama.
lot of drama. But who tells us? I mean, who has set this standard for us? And again, we're talking to Black fathers. We're talking to, you know, the brothers who are in relationships, and we're releasing this, you know, right after Valentine's Day. So it's probably a whole lot of relationship stuff popping in your mind right now. But it's just like, who sets that standard for us?
Yeah. Who said, and who sets that it was healthy?
That's right.
I mean, by the time we get to our wives, a lot of times we giving her the worst of us.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, when if we would have just, if somebody would have changed the narrative and said, you know what, commitment is a good thing, then maybe we would be given, from the beginning, we would be giving our spouses the best of us.
What if you say, oh, we talked about open. What if it's not open in your relationship as it pertains to others, but I want to be open with my wife?
Open in terms of sexually open?
Well, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, it could be communication. And I will tell you, I think the challenge for a lot of us as men, as is, and I heard this somewhere, I don't know where it was. I wish I could remember where I heard it. But the cat mentioned that because we do a lot of sticking and moving as we come up, once we do get into that committed relationship, we become desensitized to intimacy. Right. And so the whole notion of openness might not necessarily be a sexual thing for us. Yeah. Probably the real desire or the real need from a Black male perspective is being able to be open and vulnerable emotionally from a standpoint of communication, to share your thoughts, your dreams, and open yourself up to the point in which you allow someone to potentially hurt you. Because once you allow them to potentially hurt you and then you realize that they don't, then it's just like, I can let my guard down a little bit. And then maybe I'm cool, you know, staying in and doing what I have to do.
And it's funny you said it. A lot of times our sticking and moving is we're searching for intimacy.
Yes.
right? But we disguise it as sex.
Mm.
You see what I mean? And so we just keep sticking and moving and sticking and moving, and we don't ever get anything from it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the intimacy we're really searching for, right?
Absolutely.
The closeness we're really searching for. But we think if we just keep sticking and moving, it's going, we just gonna all of a sudden find it. What we don't understand is the intimacy is created from the vulnerability. Right? Sex doesn't equal intimacy. Vulnerability equals intimacy. It's so messed up because that's how we've been taught, right? We've romanticized sex to think it's more than what it really is, right? Intimacy is the conversation you had before the sex.
Wow.
You see what I mean? And so that's what I want us to do as men too, is just being okay with vulnerability and the intimacy piece and connecting with it. That's why, like, even in our marriages, that's why a lot of times the woman stops being interested in sex. It's because we're not giving her intimacy. We're just giving her sex. Right?
So fellas, we're releasing this right after Valentine's Day. So if she didn't give you some on the 14th, maybe. Yep.
You might need to step your game up a little bit, right?
Step your game up, and it's not the physical part; it's the other part.
It's the sitting beside her on the couch part when you like, why am I just sitting beside you on the couch? And she's like, no, touch me, right? Touch my hand, right? It's the sacrifices you make for her. That's intimacy to her. It's the sharing of your fears with her. That's intimacy for her. So we just thinking, oh, we should just show up and everybody want to have sex with each other. And women just aren't built that way. You know what I mean? They're built to connect a lot more than we are. Well, I think we're both built that way. We're just socialized differently.
We're built that way, but we're just socialized differently. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
So I'm with you on this platform. It's like, how do we get back to intimacy and commitment versus just sex?
And wow. Fathers, this is Troy is dropping bars, right? I mean, this is really something for you to think about. And especially, again, coming after Valentine's Day and, the romantic side of things, thinking about it from the standpoint of not sex, but intimacy. But then your commitment. What is it that you are committed to? And can you be committed to what you have? And when I mention being committed to what you have, it's the concept of, contentment versus complacency, right? And so, like, I think a lot of times we take those two, we interchange them, but we don't take enough time to really delineate the differences between being content and being complacent.
Yes.
Because your relationships, like, we should be content in our relationships, but we should never be complacent in our relationship.
And it's funny you bring that up. Like, one of the things I put on my Facebook page was one of the things that last year taught me was learning the difference between contentment and complacency, right? And so being happy is okay. Like, if I'm happy with where I am in my marriage, then I'm content with that. I'm like, okay, I'm great. But if my wife starts to change in some seasons, it's like I started to change through some seasons.
Absolutely.
It's a little something different for me in this season, right? I can't be complacent with just saying I'm happy with how things are now. I got to give her what she needs and then become content with that. And then become content again and again. That's how we got to look at it. I think I was listening to TD Jakes one time, and he talked about, relationships are always good on the straightaway, but we tend to lose each other in the curves.
Oh, wow. Right? That's real.
That's where we tend to lose control of the relationships, is in the curves, right? So how do we go through the curves? You know what I mean? And so we can't get overly complacent, but we also got to be happy to the point where we don't feel like we got to have an open marriage. Right? Because all we're really looking for in the openness, at the end of the day, let's just be honest, as men, what we're looking for is a different piece of booty.
That's right. That's real. 100, being 100, that's it.
That's it. We always think ain't nothing like some new, whatever.
Yeah, ain't nothing better than whatever than some new. Yeah, we know that. We know the saying.
Dude, at a certain age, you done been there, done that.
That's right.
Got the trophy for it and everything, right? It's like, I'm kind of, what's that different?
That's right.
It's not really, at the core of it, is really not that different. But what's different with your wife is the intimacy. See, that's the difference. You know what I mean? So we got to be okay and content with the fact that I'm getting more from my wife, essentially, than I would from someone outside.
That's big. That's big. And you mentioned, like, as you grow and, as she grows, one of the things that I wrote actually in my book, Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto, actually, you inspired some of the book as well. We had a chapter talking about some of your, you and I's conversations before. But one of the things that a buddy of mine, he's he's like a mentor of mine, shared was, when I first got married, I asked him for some advice in regards to being married and kind of doing my thing. And he said, Mike, the one piece of advice I will give you is to make sure that you reintroduce yourself to your wife every so often, because you change, she changes. I mean, that's one of those things that we don't do. It's just like, I'm 39 at this particular moment. I'm not the same brother I was at 29. And when I'm 49, I probably will not be the same guy as I am, currently at 39. So I think about growth mindset. We think about growth mindset as it pertains to businesses or, your work or whatever. But what about growth mindset as it pertains to your relationship as you and your spouse both grow? What are your thoughts on that?
Man, let me tell you something. I'm still uncovering stuff about my wife and about myself. Right. And as I uncover things about myself and as I grow, it's what you said. I have to then reintroduce myself to my wife and say, I used to think this way about these things, but now I think about them this way. I'll give you an example. It's not necessarily a relationship, but it's just in my life where I am. Right. When I think about like women's issues, right, like Me Too movement, stuff like that. 10 years ago, I never even could grasp what women go through, right? I could never even grasp like why I should think about things the way I think about them now. But then I became a father.
Of a little girl.
Worldview of a little girl. Of a worldview changes, right? Now I'm interested, getting the growth mindset in women's issues. So I'm listening to more podcasts. I'm reading more books. I'm having more conversations around those things. So now my mindset is growing. And as my mindset and my perspective grows, I have to continue to stay connected to my wife within those moments, right? Because she understands I'm thinking differently than I ever was before, right? So I think where we mess up, though, is we start saying stuff like, I was like this when you met me. Or, we just kind of get really, really stubborn about, I ain't never been that way. Well, what if I need you to be a different season, right? Because the marriage was about the commitment to the life of us. Right, that's why we got married. It was the commitment to the life of us, good and bad, sickness and health, right? All those things. We forget that part.
Wow.
Right? We forget about the growth part of that. I mean, all that stuff that you go through when you're in a relationship, right? You're gonna go through these seasons and these roller coasters, but can you hang with me in the curves?
The curve. I love that analogy, man. Man, I'm gonna tell you what's interesting about the curves. If you watch somebody or if you ride motorcycles, folks understand. I don't ride motorcycles, but I've watched people do it. And the thing that's so interesting, as they hit a curve, if you ever watch someone on a motorcycle, they always lean into the curve as they hit it.
Yep.
That's what
he was talking about.
That's it. You never lean out. If you lean out of the curve, you're gonna lose control of it. You must lean into the curve because that gives you more control. And so as we hit a curve in life, our natural reaction is kind of like touching the stove and stuff, you pull away, right? Natural reaction is to pull away. That's just our natural response. But as it pertains to a curve in life, we should we should catch ourselves and restrict that notion or restrict that urge to pull away and go back to it, because we have to lean in. That's the only way that we can face it.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason we don't lean in most times because we're uncomfortable, right?
Wow.
And that's when you get that uncomfortable space. That's where all the growth is, right?
Absolutely.
But we resist it the most. We resist that space the most. I always think about, if we go back to sexually, right? Maybe the things that your wife or you loved when you was 25, maybe she needs something totally different at 35 or even 45 or 55, right? But if she brings up,
come on, 75, 85, we're going to keep this thing going.
We keep going 95, right?
103, what you talking about?
There we go. But the attention she's going to need might be different. So you got to be open. Even I go through that in my marriage, right? Where it's like, okay, instead of me just shutting things down because it's different, right? Let me ask a few questions. Let me be open. Okay, let me be more open to what you're needing from me versus getting defensive and saying, oh, what I'm doing is not good enough for you no more.
And that's our natural inclination.
Yeah.
When you don't want to change, but see, we go back to complacent versus content. That's when we've gone from being content to becoming complacent, because complacency is basically when you don't want to adjust and or change if necessary. Contentment is I'm good. Now, if I need to change, I will. Complacency is like, you know what? I ain't changing. I'm cool. You just better get on the bandwagon. What did Bernie Mac say? I'm 42 years old. I'm by the time. You better hurry up and talk about that, Holland.
Hey, there you go. And that's when they start looking for something open.
There you go. Then they're like, you be 42 years old by yourself, player. Yeah.
There you go. I mean, think about how your mind changes
That's right.
just over these years, dude. So, I mean, the platform like what you have is like helping challenge how we're naturally thinking.
That's right.
You know, that's why I love a platform like yours, right? It's like, you know, I've been socialized this way, but man, somebody out there is thinking just like me. They're going through the same thing I'm going through.
We're brothers. And see, and that's the whole concept. When you think about Black fathers now, it's like, I want to talk to other brothers, some that aren't fathers, but potentially will be fathers at some point, but we're all Black men. And we all bring wisdom, insight, inspiration. And guys like yourself are well-trained and certified and have all these different examples and scenarios to pull from and can communicate it in a way that we can get it because we all speak the same language. We speak the language of Black man, right? It's like, I don't have to give a disclaimer on the front end and say, bam, bam, bam. Like we mentioned the Breakfast Club before. It ain't gonna be no brother that we need that's watching this that's gonna need this. Oh, what's the Breakfast Club?
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Oh, we say Ronnie DeVoe, they're gonna be like New Edition. Yeah, we all know that. I don't have to give any disclaimers. We speak the language of those that we're speaking to because we are living it ourselves, right? And that's why things like this are important. They're powerful, but they're also is needed to challenge the thought process because what we have known, some of it's good, but then some of it is not so good, and we have to challenge that thinking so that we can be better going forward.
Man, listen, think about it in your parenting. Right? I think about my parenting, right? The things that you saw, you know, growing up wasn't always the right answer.
Absolutely.
To parenting, right?
Absolutely.
But that's all your parents knew.
That's right.
So I see myself sometimes wanting to react in ways with my child that maybe I grew up with that reaction, but then I challenge myself. I say, well, what's the point of that? Like, why am I doing it this way? Why am I upset about what she just did? You know, why shouldn't I raise my voice versus having a conversation with her? You know, I can't just tell her now just because I said so. Maybe I need to give her some reason. Like, so the things that we grew up a lot of times learning is what your parents knew, but it didn't necessarily make it effective or right.
And when you know better, you're supposed to do better.
You're supposed to, right? But I think we got to stop just cycling. That's
right.
cycle, same stuff over and over and over again. I mean, times have changed. So guess what? Growth mindset.
And you know, it's funny you say that and you thinking about it from the perspective of parenting. We had something that happened with us probably about a month ago. You know, I've never been like a spanker. I'm one that like pops and pinches for correction. That's how I've always been. So like if you do something wrong, I might thump, pop, or whatever, redirect the kid to what they need to do. But I'm not the one that's like, I'm going to spank you as punishment for what you did. But that's actually changed for me even to this day. About a month ago, you know, my little girl had did something, so she got pinched in the moment, and it hurt. Her arm hurt from getting pinched, and so she was in the bedroom. We were talking before we went to bed, and for some odd reason, she was talking about her. You know, it hurt her arm to get pinched, and she mentioned that she said, and we talked about how we love her and all of that. She said something that blew us away, and I didn't have a response for it, and it changed my mindset. My little girl immediately, and she's 7, said, well, I guess love hurts sometimes. I was like, ooh. And I didn't have a response because I was just like, you know, baby, love does not hurt. It's not supposed to hurt. And literally, I literally at that moment, I told my wife, it's like, I'm not popping and pinching anymore because I don't want my kids growing up thinking that love is supposed to hurt.
Man,
powerful. It literally cut me in my soul because I was just like, you know, I mean, I wasn't doing anything wrong. It wasn't like some, you know, hardcore or anything. It's just pinching, popping, whatever. Hey, you're wrong. Hey, stop. You know what I'm saying? It was just that type of thing. But in that moment, when she responded to me and said, I guess love hurts sometimes. And she was just talking randomly, not trying to get me told or nothing. It stuck. And that thing cut me. And it made me literally think to myself, what am I doing? And it made me stop and say, you know what? I'm not doing that anymore. I'll just be mad and just have to shut the door and y'all are going, you know, we'll just go in your room and fuss, do what you got to do. But it made me think about it.
Man, I had an epiphany this morning. My little girl had done something where she pulled something down and it broke. Something I had been telling her not to do. And so instead of yelling, I said, just go away. Right? And I just sent her, and I noticed I've started creating this habit of telling her to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what am I reinforcing there? I said, let me stop this, because I don't want her to think that because she does something wrong that daddy doesn't love her, that she has to just go away.
That's right.
Right.
That's
And so
big.
I'm challenging myself now. I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to have a conversation with her about it, and maybe send her something, maybe send her to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
But just saying go away,
Mm.
I just don't know how that's going to affect her long term.
But you know what's funny though is like you're a talker like me, and so if you get to talking with her, she's probably gonna want to go away more than you're gonna.
Probably so, and I'm okay with that. But I don't want her to be like, my daddy always telling me just to go away.
I know, right? No, here comes that lecture, Daddy. Please send me away.
There you go.
I love it.
Oh man, that's cool though. But just thinking about it though, right? It's like
it's real.
The fact that we actually, I think a lot of parenting in past generations was really unconscious parenting, right? And unemotionally intelligent parenting. It was just kind of like, here's a stimulus, here's a response, right? It was never like a thought process around a lot of things.
It's funny. Early in this conversation, because we're talking about relationships, we talked about the notion of commitment, right? And we talked about the notion of, basically doing what you know, or kind of just following suit with what you've always wanted to do. You mentioned the notion of parenting, right? And how in generations past, sometimes parenting was just unconscious, right? And so it's like when you take a concept or a principle, no matter what segment, right? If your parenting is unconscious and kind of has no basis, you're just basically going through the motion. What does that say about your relationship with your spouse?
That's big, dude.
That's interesting.
Because a lot of us just exist in our marriages. Right? We're not consciously living our marriages. We got married, we had the wedding, then after that we put on autopilot.
That's right. We're good roommates. We're roommates, basically.
Essentially, there have been times where I consciously saw us becoming roommates and said, nah, we're not doing that.
That's right. And it's funny because, and that's one of the things that we as brothers listen to. I hope y'all are really listening to this, take notes, come back and replay it again, but really take time to come back and think, in your relationship, are you and your spouse becoming roommates? Are you just going through the motions? Okay, she cooks, I cut the grass, she drops the kids off, I pick them up. We just go here, we go. I mean, it's just like the same routine, and we blink. Yeah. And we blink again, and somebody's 18, and we blink again, the kids graduate from college, and now we're sitting at home again, and I don't know this chick in the bed with me, right?
Man, the fastest growing divorced population are people like over 50.
Yeah. The empty nesters. That's right, the empty nesters. And so, fellas, I mean, as you think, Black fathers now, again, Black fathers now is about us being great fathers, becoming excellent as fathers, but it's also about us becoming excellent as men. And as a man, we are this complex puzzle, right? It's so many different pieces to this puzzle that are not just defined by any one piece, right? So we are this thing with a whole lot of different components, and we have to take care of all of those things so that we can have this complete puzzle as we grow, evolve, and develop throughout life. And so, like Troy mentioned, that fastest growing, divorce population is the 50 and older crowd, because they're empty nesters. They spent the last 25 years raising kids and going to practices and, traveling to, retreats and this and that. And they never spent time with each other.
Nope.
They never spent time. They have nothing in common anymore aside from the kids. That's it. The little girl has your eyes and she has her hair and has this one's attitude and whatever. That's the only thing y'all have in common. So
and underneath the core of it all is consciousness.
That's right.
That's really what platforms like this and stuff have to be about, right? Is just make me conscious of what I'm doing, right? I mean, think about our lives, right? So our brain protects us by creating habits.
Absolutely.
Right? Mental shortcuts. That's what the brain does.
Absolutely.
And so that's detrimental, though, when you talk about relationships and parenting and sex and work. Like, the habits are great because they get you through the day without intellectual energy all the time. But sometimes the consciousness is what's going to save your marriage.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
See, it's not so. So when you start thinking about survival, right? You start thinking about like a fight or flight. Your blood pressure goes up and all of that to get you ready if you need to fight or you need to run from a predator or whatever. Like what they call evolutionary biology and all of that stuff. But that's just for simple functions as it pertains to survival. As it pertains to nurturing of relationships, you need to be conscious. It's not just some autonomic function that happens in your body. You have to actually put yourself into it. You have to pay attention. You have to react. You have to respond. You have to dig your well before you're thirsty and set the stage for and create the environment for a thriving relationship. It's so many different things, but it goes back to what you mentioned about conscious. That's powerful, brothers. I hope you're listening to Troy's words here. Be conscious in your relationships. Again, I know we dropped this right after Valentine's Day. Maybe we should have dropped it before Valentine's Day.
Because somebody didn't get a gift this year. Yeah. They were just on autopilot.
Yeah, but look, after listening to this, you know, actually, we're probably helping you out because the chocolates and stuff are going to be on sale after the 14th. See, look, we still got your back, fellas, right? The chocolates, the flowers, they all going to be on sale. So if you messed up before, go on and get the stuff on discount now.
There you go.
Help you out, and then you can help yourself out with your spouse. So
it's true.
It's hey, look, man, look at here, helping a brother out.
That's it.
But man, I'm not gonna hold you too long today, man. But I really appreciate this because I think so many of us really need to rethink our relationships, rethink our commitment, rethink us being conscious and being conscious on the things that matter. And your relationship is paramount to the success of your family, but then also to the example that you're setting for the kids that are watching you, because they're watching your every move. Is there anything else that you'd kind of like to leave with the brothers as we wrap this thing up? And obviously, leave where the folks can find you and follow you and check out what you got going on.
Man, listen. So I think if all the men on this platform leave with that one point of consciousness, then we've done a good job.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just being conscious. But then the second point of always think about who's watching. Right? Because it's so powerful. We can preach and we can lecture and we can do all that to our kids, but at the end of the day, they're gonna watch you.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean, you've probably done this in your life where you listen to people talk about their parents. They never talk about the speech they gave them. Right? What they talk about is, man, my dad used to do this, and this to my mom. Right? Or my mom used to treat my dad this way. They never say, well, she had great talks with me about different things. It's all
That's real.
That's real. It's all about what were they doing day in and day out. I mean, I whenever there's any dissension between my wife and I, my little girl notices. She's 3. The energy changes. She's like, no, like she ain't trying to hear that dissension. Like she's like, nah, come hug, kind of thing. So that's what I want us to lead with: consciousness and example. Right? If we can do those two things better, to me, that's a good thing, right? As far as what I have going on, my book is still always out there.
Okay.
What I love, while what you don't know will hurt you. And what I'll tell you is I'm writing the second book, which is I don't know the tagline. Still will be a part of the Teach Me How to Love series. Okay. I don't know the tagline, but it's going to be more geared towards couples. This one was more like I'm finding love. I'm shifting my mindset around love. I'm trying to get into a relationship. This next one going to be like, I got married. Now what?
I got married. You know what? Maybe I got married. Now what?
That might be the title right there.
That's it. I got married. Now what?
That might be the title right there. Hey, don't be surprised when that come out. I have to give you a royalty off of that thing.
It's all good. Look, the royalty is having you own this thing. I got you on my platform, brother. So I'm down with that. That's enough for me.
And if anybody wants to follow me, they can just go to my website, man. ExclusiveThoughts.com.
Exclusive Thoughts with an X.
And a K.
XK. Oh, Lord. See, that's that whole,
KLUSIVE.com. They can go there. They can find me anywhere on my website.
Okay. And I'll have all that in the show notes and all the notes here. So everybody make sure to check out Troy Spry, ExclusiveThoughts.com. Grab a copy of his book, Teach Me How to Love. He's showing it here. If you're watching the video on YouTube, you can see it. Teach Me How to Love. Let me see.
Why what you don't know will hurt you.
Why what you don't know will hurt you. Dig that. Grab a copy of his book. Visit him at exclusivethoughts.com. Follow him on social media too. Exclusive Thoughts, XK Exclusive. And I'll have it all in the show notes so you can kind of get with him.
Yes, sir, man. I appreciate all you doing out there, brother.
Man, I appreciate you, man. And definitely, y'all, make sure to follow him, but make sure to support the brother. Make sure to let him know you heard about him on Black Fathers Now. And this is, I can't say nothing else about it, brother. This is real. I appreciate the convo, man.
Oh, man, appreciate you, man. I got to come back for the 3rd time.
Daddy, look at here, man. Make it do what it do, brother. That's what's up. Hey, fellas, man, I appreciate y'all tuning in. As always, visit blackfathersnow.com. Follow Black Fathers Now on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Subscribe via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, subscribe. You're watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Leave some comments. Share. And, grab a copy of my book as well, Dynamic Black Fatherhood Manifesto, 10 Commitments Necessary for Excellence in Black Fatherhood. And it's brought to you by blackfamilyapparel.com. Visit Black Family Apparel to grab some dope apparel that celebrates the nuances of the Black family. I don't know if you can see it, man. Deposit a little love in the world.
I see it.
Yeah, one of the shirts here. Dig it. But until next time, fellas, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.